You are listening to Soberoso, a show dedicated to alcoholics, drug addicts, survivors of abuse, and those of us with mental health issues too. At Soberoso, we celebrate all recovery programs and the journey many people have taken to turn their lives around. It doesn't matter if you are young, old, black, white, or rainbow. At Soberoso, we invite you to join us in sharing our passion for recovery. Hello, beautiful peeps, and welcome to Soberoso, where we invite guests and listeners to join us in sharing our passion for recovery. My name is Dora, and I am a recovering alcoholic and an addict, and I am also your host. Today, we invite you to take a trip with us to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where we will be sharing our passion for recovery with Bill Ward. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Before we get into this episode, I just want to remind you of our explicit warning. We will be dealing with sensitive subject matter in this episode that may not be suitable for young children. There's your warning. Hello, Bill.
Hello, Dora.
Wow, it's so good to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's really good to be here. I've been looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, welcome to Soberoso. We are thrilled to have you joining us today as we continue on with our kickoff.
Awesome. Happy to be here. Can't wait to hear what we have to talk about today. I never know.
Well, we'll just go with the flow. That's the way it should be. So, Bill, one of my first questions to you is, when is your sobriety date?
I stopped using substances in 2015 on March the 22nd. That's all mind or mood altering substances.
Okay. And is that what you are recovering from, is addiction?
Yes, that's correct. And, as I'm a student of our literature, the big book, I'm also recovering from bondage of self. And that's also a huge part of my recovery. Definitely. I hear you there. There's a lot of aspects when we get into recovery, but the first of them is putting away the drinking and the drugging, and then that's just scratching the surface. You know it.
Whew. So can you bring us back to what was going on in your life in that last month of drinking and drugging?
In that last month of mostly drugging at that time around, my story's it's not your typical story, but by the time I got to the second phase of my addiction, which was drugs primarily, mm-hmm. I had been losing my wife and my kids. I had built up a business for 13 years, and I was making millions of dollars doing that. I lived in $1 million house, and systematically over the last 3 years, those things were one after another taken away from me by my addiction. I ended up being basically homeless in that last month, asking my ex-wife at the time, who wasn't with me anymore, if I could borrow the trailer back to sleep in. And she said yes, out of sympathy, although I had hurt her so bad. She gave me the trailer. I parked it on the foreclosed property, and I lived in that for 8 to 10 months as I started my recovery journey. But that's what it looked like at the very end.
Wow. So you had just basically been burning everything to the ground like many of us do.
Yep.
So may I ask what you were addicted to?
I was addicted to marijuana, but what destroyed me was crack cocaine.
Right. Yeah, that's a nasty one. that's where my later days took me to. And I don't know why. I mean, a drug is a drug is a drug, but for some reason, even when I look at it at myself, for some reason, just saying crack makes me feel so dirty. And I don't know why that one seems so like they're all drugs, right? But, and I did an assortment of them, but I don't know why that one makes me feel like so shameful.
And I had the exact same viewpoint on it. I could admit I'm an alcoholic, but to be a drug addict that burned his life doing crack cocaine was like, it was a new level, and that was hard to accept.
It is. Yeah, even bringing it up now, you know, I've got 1.5 years of clean and sober time, and it still makes me kind of cringe. I don't know what that is, that it's just like, oh, like that's the level I went to. Ugh. Anyways, all right. So how did you find help out of that gutter? Did you reach out for help, or did somebody reach out to you?
Well, it was funny. My dad's been a member of 12-step fellowship for, at that time, over 32 years.
Wow.
He had watched me in my early years with my alcohol and drugs when I was younger, go through the periods of up and down and depression and losing jobs and destroying my life as a younger person. And then at 22 years old, I said a prayer and I was able to stop. I didn't understand the full disease of addiction, but I ended up turning my addiction, the spiritual malady portion, over into workaholism. And that's when I had built up my family and my business and whatnot. And my dad just watched me be an angry, discontented man. And behind my back would talk to my mom and my wife and let them know what was actually happening, because I didn't know I was a dry drunk. Although I was still smoking weed and using some other things. But by the time I had gotten to that last 5 years where I was smoking crack, my dad just watched me. And about 2 years into that, I had told my dad, I'm struggling with this. And he told me, son, just stay in touch with me and keep talking to me. And one day I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just said, Dad, I need you to take me to a meeting. And he said, son, I've been waiting 32 years for you to ask me that question. And that's how I got started.
Wow, I got chills. Oh my goodness. Wow. So had you been exposed to recovery? Or, I mean, obviously you saw your father in recovery living a different lifestyle. So you must have known that there was help out there when you decided to reach for it.
I did. And I remember when I was 17, he had paid me to go to treatment. He was the director of a treatment center. He paid me to go. So that was my first exposure to recovery, but I wasn't interested in it back then at all.
Right.
And I had saw my dad as, I didn't see him as a humble, kind, loving, caring, forgiving man like he is. I saw him as a weak-willed, weak person who allowed people to walk on him, who wouldn't speak his mind. I looked at all of his qualities as detriments because I was in such a self-will run riot mode, using force and anger and combativeness and just getting what I thought I wanted, right? So I looked at him in a totally different light back then. Now I see him as just a humble, kind, caring man who always was like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Do you have a big family? Do you have other brothers or sisters that have struggled with addiction or alcoholism?
On my mom's side, my mom is white. My dad is full-blood Cree. On my mom's side, she grew up with 12 brothers and sisters. They're all fairly normal. And I have one brother who's active in alcoholism and drug addiction and has been for years and years.
Right.
And my family on my native side, because of drug and alcohol addiction and the malady in general, I don't know anyone on that side of my family at all.
Right. Wow. Okay. So you mentioned that your dad paid you to go into like a rehab or a recovery type situation. can you explain how that works to me? I mean, I never went into a rehab situation, but so I have no idea. Do you need to qualify to get in, or do you need to apply and say I'm at my end of my rope? Like, how would you even get into a facility?
Well, typically nowadays you have to apply and you have to go through a process. But back then, when I was 17, almost 18, when my dad approached me, he was actually the director of the treatment center, and he was able to get me in under the radar. I wouldn't go unless he offered me the money, and I said, okay, let me think about it. And then I said I would only go on one condition, if I could bring a friend. So my friend and I had a chat. He asked his parents. We ended up going to treatment. So I had an in because my dad was running the place. But typically, as I work with many alcoholics and addicts, I know the process. It's you have to apply, and then they have a waiting list, and then, hopefully you're still sober when they make the call to you.
Wow. Yeah, that whole process is very foreign to me, and I can't imagine being, at your worst level and reaching out for help and then having to wait, to destroy yourself. How long is the waiting list? A week, a month?
Sometimes it varies. So most guys, they have to wait a month to 3 months. But what I found is if they call every day, if people call every day and they're really, really proactive and really showing a willingness to want to get in and want to change, I believe that Creator, God, will open the door, and some of these places are able to get you in as long as you're persistent and consistent. And so that's what I tell the guys who are really, really desperate. You call every day, you show up, you show them that you really want it. And every now and then a bed comes free, and then people get in. So, I think it's just willingness, right? We both know if we're working with our Creator and working with God, He opens doors, right? And He understands the willingness deep inside of a human being. And with these guys I work with, if they're really willing, the universe kind of works around you sometimes, right?
Yeah. I guess I'm just thinking of, my own situation at rock bottom. I didn't know anything about rehab centers, and in my own opinion, without knowing anything, I had just formed this opinion that it would be way too expensive and I couldn't afford it. So I just started off by, going to some meetings and thought these people might be able to teach me how to drink properly.
No, I totally hear you. And honestly, Dora, treatment centers are great. They give you a lot of structure. The misconception, in my opinion, about treatment centers with the general population of people and addicts in general is that they cure you. But every treatment center here in Calgary where I live, their basis is 12-step.
Right.
Most of the treatment centers, it's 12-step. Why? Because it's the 12 steps that keeps you sober. All this treatment really does is it structures you, gives you some tools, sets the ball or the momentum in motion, but then they're always promoting meetings and sponsorships and all these kind of things that come straight out of the program. And that's what actually keeps a person sober, right?
Oh, 100%. I agree with you there. I guess going into treatment, you're also just having a safe place to come off of all the drugs and let your system, I don't know, detox, I guess.
Yeah, and that's
in a safe environment.
And that's what a lot of guys use it for too. They get so bummed out on the streets. They'll, basically it's like a break from the lifestyle of being homeless, and they get to kind of get lifted up for 3 or 4 months, and they use it as a tool to try to put gaps in their using, and it's like a mitigation plan that never works.
Right. So with your knowledge in Calgary, are there several treatment centers, and are they at full capacity?
Typically, COVID has done what it's done in our city, so it's kind of changed things a little bit. But typically speaking, there's a number of treatment centers. I'm going to say there's 4 main ones that I really respect, and then there's a few other ones. So there might be 7 or so men's treatment centers here, but 4 that are doing the deal very well, and they are usually at full capacity. And I work with a lot of the addicts and alcoholics out of those treatment centers because they're required to find sponsors. And because I'm so visible and I carry a message to different meetings and through different types of media, I get a lot of these guys asking me for help. So yeah, they're doing a good job here. You know, I do some posting on Instagram and I say my opinion. You know, Calgary's the big book capital of Canada. Like,
Really?
that's what I believe.
Wow.
We got solid recovery here. It's based in God. It's based in the directions. It's based in the steps. It's not just opinions. It's not just ideas. It's not just the theory. And it's, you know, it's great here.
Wow. That's good to hear. I got sober in Mexico, so I don't really know about recovery in Canada. You know, this is what I know is what's around us here in Mexico. But on a couple visits home, I have checked into meetings in Canada and different areas. But yeah, it's just foreign to me, you know. So that's cool to hear that Calgary's got such a good recovery going on.
Yeah. You know, I used to travel for work, and I would travel all over Western Canada, and I was doing the program all over, and I would go to meetings in every city and every town, and I just would come home and I would be, how grateful am I to be recovering in this town? Like, listen to the actual message here. And I'm a data collector. So I collect data. I see what works. I see what doesn't work. I've sponsored 250, 300 men.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. And my best friend also has sponsored 250, 300 men. And
what?
And we compare our data and we see what really works and what really doesn't. We look at the big book and we see how the book is exactly right in almost everything it says. And, you know, we've come to the point where the big book is basically the word. And if I follow those directions to the T, like the directions come true in my life, the promises come true. And when I first read some of that stuff, Dora, I was just like, you know, what a joke, or what a selling feature. I just didn't believe it. But through the action of me trying to do that and working with other people and seeing what happens when you follow the exact directions and when you don't, like, I've really come up with, you know, I've like to think I've gotten to the bottom of a thing or two to the best that I can. And I really use these tools and the data in my sponsorship and in my own life. And it's great. I love it. I'm passionate about recovery. I'm passionate about changing and helping people change their lives and me growing closer and changing my own life, right?
Definitely. I hear you 100%. Wow. So, yeah, you mentioned a little bit about the big book, and in my own experience, every time I flip open a page, I can't believe how this book was written in 1935 and how some of just one sentence, it's like, how did they know this like so long ago? Like, it just blows my mind.
I know. There's no way Bill W. I think I have the big book original manuscript and I read it, and I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, I'm pretty sure Bill wrote the whole big book in 6 weeks.
Wow. And
there's no way Bill wrote that by himself. It's so deep. Every word flows into the next word. Every sentence flows into the next sentence. Every paragraph, like, it's like a ball of yarn.
Yeah.
As it just weaves itself together, and it's just so beautiful, hey?
It is. And I can read one paragraph 10 times and then read it a different day, and I get totally something out of it that I never saw before. And it's just amazing.
It is.
You mentioned that some guys come to you before they would go to a recovery program, and you encourage them to, you know, keep trying and calling back every day. How did these guys find you?
Well, I think what ends up happening is I'm a no bullshit kind of guy in the meeting rooms and online. And why have I developed this attitude of no bullshit? Because I've seen too many people die.
Right.
And I know what I needed. My sponsor was a guy who cared more about my life than my feelings, and he told me the truth. And I didn't always like the truth, and he pissed me off many times. But I kind of developed the same attitude mostly because I see people die, and I've understood the data as I've sponsored so many men, and I see what works and I see what doesn't. So when I share, I weed out a lot of the guys who are going to screw around. I weed out a lot of newcomers because a lot of newcomers aren't coming to me. I usually get the chronic relapsers. So my message is so strong, and I'm going to say powerful, and sometimes offensive to people because they think I'm coming from ego, when really I'm coming from a sincere desire to actually tell you the truth. I get these guys that are usually super willing. I also get guys who are anywhere from 2 years to 40 years, even old timers and mid timers. And because honestly, Dora, I'm not really focused when I'm sponsoring. My focus isn't the substance at all. My focus is turning your will and your life over to the care of God, which is actually treating the spiritual malady. And like the book says, if I can turn my whole will and life over, I'll never want to drink.
Yeah, that's right. And the obsession to drink is removed.
So, but there's the two delusions in the big book. The first delusion is that I'm ever able to safely drink or use alcohol or drugs ever again. That delusion has to be smashed. But that's the one we focus on. And I think it's a mistake. We should focus on the second delusion. It's more important. The delusion that I'm a victim of a delusion, that I can wrest happiness and satisfaction of this world if I only manage well.
Right.
That's the one, Dora, that I'm all about. That is actually telling me, I've been taught lies, I've believed the lies, and I keep trying to fill the hole inside myself with things from outside myself. And if I can smash that delusion and allow God to run the show, then I will be okay, which is the total truth.
Fantastic. That's amazing. So most of these guys then that approach you, you said some of them are even old timers, like with a lot of years of sobriety. I guess you're just like a mentor and an amazing mentor to them.
Yeah, that's, I think on my website, we came up with 3 names: change maker, mentor, and recovery activist. And, I don't want to like promote myself as a mentor, but I try to be a mentor. Like, I want to live the program so that guys can see that I live what I'm talking about, and to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. To show other alcoholics exactly how I recover through my actions is the main purpose of what I do as a sponsor.
Exactly. Walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah.
Well, now this other question popped up in my mind because I've been in Mexico for a number of years, and I don't know if you know anything about this topic, but I've heard murmurs of this fentanyl, and I don't know anything about it. How are you educated in that? What is it? What's going on with that?
Well, up here in Calgary, a number of years ago, crystal meth became very, very popular, and it is still fairly popular. And then shortly thereafter, fentanyl kind of came into the scene. It's an opiate. Small amounts of this drug are scattered throughout the crystal meth, cocaine, and the other drugs. So it's kind of infiltrated everywhere.
So it's cut with other drugs. You don't specifically buy that. It's cut in with the other drugs. Is that right?
You can specifically buy it, and it's cut into the other drugs.
Wow.
And it's killing people like unbelievably quick. And almost every week there's somebody dying. Usually the bottom line is it's from a fentanyl overdose of some sort.
Scary stuff. Yeah, every time I visit home, my family and my kids are speaking about how many deaths from this, and like I said, I don't know anything about it. Haven't heard anything related to it over here. The only thing I've heard is that many people are dying from it, and it's a really scary thing out there on the streets.
Yeah, it really is. I've never been addicted to opioids. I can't really fully relate, but what I can relate to is the spiritual malady of why these people want to numb the pain or numb the trauma or just feel different. I understand that part. So Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that too.
It's sad though. It really is. Like, that's why I'm so adamant and so powerful in my sharing, because if you don't get the real message in this program, you could die.
Yes, it is. It is definitely live or die. And you know what? Unfortunately, I think there is a very small percentage of us that actually make it. People come into the program and they start recovery, and people go out and they OD every single day all around the world. Soberoso is not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous or AA in any way, shape, or form. We believe there are many paths to recovery, and we celebrate all of them.
Yeah. And I'm just going to interject here with a little comment of my own. Like, I always say, with 100 people dropped off at a treatment center, and you get these 100 people coming to a meeting, out of those 100, 5 are going to stay sober for a year. Out of those 5, 2.5 make it to 5 years. But you got to realize the first 100 that you dropped off, most of them aren't there because they're there for the right reasons. Some are there because they're losing their job. Some are there because they're losing their family. Some are there because they don't know what's wrong. Some are there because of mental health issues. So you don't really know why people are actually joining into recovery.
Right. They might not be willing themselves
to
be there.
But out of the 5 that make it to a year, only 2.5 of those really make it to 5. Why? Because we're focused on the substance. We're not focused on the root of the troubles, which is selfish self-centeredness, like the book says. Mm-hmm. And like, one of my missions is to really get the numbers up. I go to meetings all the time. I see the birthday boards. There's 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, and then a big gap, and then there's just 1 10-year, and then there's maybe a 15-year. What about the 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Right.
There's none of that. Why? Because we're focused on the substance. You get a year in, we pat you on the butt, we get you sober, and say, you know what, you're on your way. But you're not on your way because you don't have a clue of really what's the matter. We removed the substance from your life through the work, but that's just the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times too is that some people don't keep their rock bottom close. Like, I hold on to that, and I know how awful it was. And, you know, maybe after you get a year of not drinking and drugging, people start to think, oh, I could go out like a gentleman and drink again. I'll just have 1 or 2. You know, I've got this under control. And they forget how awful those days were before they first got clean and sober, you know? Yeah.
Well, and the book tells me at a certain point, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink. And all that is a mental defense. And it might be effective for a year or 2 even. Yeah. But it says at a certain point, he will have no effective mental defense. His defense must come from God. But also, how do I keep my step 1 close? The book tells me, as part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them they must do likewise for still others. I carry the message. I sponsor people. Mm-hmm. I see these people in front of me on a daily basis, and I feel the desperation, and I see the hurt, and it's like I live it again. Every day I work with somebody who's suffering, right? Or I go to a meeting and I see the person who had a year come back. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say this. So I'll go to these meetings and I'll say my spiel at the meetings. And these new people won't come and ask me for help because it's pretty straightforward and it's a little intimidating. Mm-hmm. But what's funny is, as I piss people off in the program, after about a year or 2 or 3, and the truth that I say resonates over the years, they finally come and say, what you said has been true. Mm-hmm. Can you give me a hand now? Right. So to me, it's about persistency and consistency and staying true to what the message is. And eventually, because people just can't stay sober on their own, they can't stay sober on the theory of God, they can't stay sober on just meetings. There's a whole bunch of spiritual aspects, you know, the disciplines that take you there.
Drugging is just a symptom of underlying issues.
Totally.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for joining me and sharing our passion for recovery. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what kind of projects are you working on? I follow you on Instagram and I see you're in front of a camera and you're spreading a message. What kind of projects are you working on right now?
So, Dora, about 2 years ago, I had finally got my career back because that's all I wanted.
Right.
And I got my career back, well, mostly. And then I was sitting in the office one day going, I don't even want to do this anymore. And then I was really scared because I got my career back and I'm rebuilding my life, and then I don't want to do this anymore. I ended up talking to God, Creator, and asking, what do you want me to do? And I got the inspiration that God just wants me to be of service. And I decided, I talked to my grandma, who's my higher power. She's passed away. And she ended up saying, Billy, don't worry about if there's money involved in what you're going to do. Go do this, follow your passion, and it'll all work out. So I quit my job and I didn't know what I was going to do, Dora. And I ended up just praying and meditating for the last 2 years. And it's come to the place where I've started this company called BILLWARDLIFE.
Yeah.
I'm a recovery activist, a mentor, and a change maker is a word that I'm kind of coining. And my website is getting developed now. My Instagram is, we kind of met through Instagram, is running. Facebook, all these social media aspects are running. And what I'm focusing on right now is I'm really going to hit First Nations community. I'm going to hit the First Nations social media, and I'm building a little bit of a platform program to really bring awareness to people that don't understand, and to the Indigenous First Nations culture themselves, but more importantly to the individual who suffers the spiritual malady. And I really want to inspire change and willingness that they take steps in the action of change, because a lot of people don't even understand what is wrong with them.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. That is, First Nations people, you hear how much alcohol is, everywhere. My 25 years ago, more than 25 years ago, 35 years ago, my very first boyfriend was Native, and he was the baby of 17 kids. And my drinking and drugging from high school, I would disappear on the reservation for weekends at a time, and yeah, I don't know. So you doing that kind of work is incredible. There's definitely a need for that, and a need for more people like you to work with the First Nations community. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a passion that I had. I used to be very prejudiced against my own First Nations people, and through some circumstances, I started seeing the truth and developing some major compassion, did some history studying, and really changed my viewpoint on that.
You're saying about working on the spiritual side of you. How does that coincide, like, with your Native roots? Like, are you more in touch with your ancestors and combined with getting clean and sober?
The big book and the big book way of spirituality is number one to me, but very close second, that aligns perfectly with our program, is Native culture. So I do them kind of in tandem with each other, and it's just, they're so linked together. And they're both a huge part of my life. I just did a Sundance. I wasn't dancing, but I was a firekeeper, and I just did a 68-hour fast with no food and water. And I help at the lodges, sweat lodges, and I love the culture now. And I used to be so prejudiced against it, so it's unbelievable.
So through getting clean and sober, it's pulled you back to your own roots and ancestors. That's amazing.
It is.
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Another thing, Dora, that I'm working on is just basic recovery and working on the spiritual malady with anybody who can relate to the spiritual malady. I really want to target corporate and employees within the city of Calgary and further out. I really believe that corporate should start taking responsibility for addictions within the workplace, and
Right.
and instead of letting it get to the point where they need to treat somebody after they're addicted, or they're suffering the ramifications from the full addiction. I think there's a way in earlier where we can head it off at the pass, so to speak, and really bring a message of hope, or resignation way early in the process. So I've met with a couple companies. They really like what I'm laying down. So I'm building a little program for the corporate management to act in a humanity aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talk with the employees, and I talk relatable thoughts, feelings, emotions, fears, spiritual malady, and why we actually drink. And so I'm hoping to get them to relate and maybe spark the interest in one of the individuals and go, yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yes, I need help, before they burn their family's life to the ground, before they die, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's fantastic work. Getting in at corporate level and educating the higher ups maybe on the symptoms and signal the red flags of addiction, and also educating them on the disease. That's incredible work, Bill.
Totally. I love it.
Well, I can feel your passion, and I am passionate about recovery too. And I've got goosebumps again.
Awesome, Dora. I'm loving this podcast. I really thank you for having me here. I'm just lit up today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And especially that you're a fellow Canadian. A lot of my viewers and followers and listeners are American, and I'm Canadian living in Mexico. So it's so nice to talk to a fellow Canadian.
Awesome. Where are you from?
I grew up in Fort Nelson, BC.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was such a small town. Well, it wasn't even a town. It was a village when I grew up. It wasn't even big enough to be a town. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to Abbotsford. All my family is in Abbotsford and Maple Ridge right now.
Yep.
And then I ended up in the big city of Vancouver, and then in Mexico since 2000. So I've kind of been all over the place.
Wow. Just cruising around.
Cruising around, following my drinking and drugging. I guess moving to Mexico, one of the big things was that I didn't have to have a car. You could walk around on the street with open liquor, and if you didn't bother anybody else, nobody would bother you. And that was a perfect idea for an alcoholic and a drug addict like me.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, wow, that's dangerous. Yeah, enough is enough. So eventually, I ended up getting sober here in Puerto Vallarta, and that was one of my excuses before I reached out to get help. Was I can't get sober in Vallarta. I had worked in all the bars. I knew all the bar people, all the bouncers, all the DJs, all the dealers, all the, it was like, I'm going to have to leave the town I love. How could I possibly get sober in this town? But I am happy to say there is a huge recovery community here of expats from the States and from Canada. And before COVID, there was 3 AA meetings every day and an NA meeting every day. So yeah, there's a very big recovery community here, and I don't have to leave.
That's great. Great to hear that. I'm glad that a town like that is really, really promoting recovery. That's beautiful to hear.
Yeah, it is alive and well. Although, as you know, COVID has taken a weird toll. Now things are online. How is COVID over there in Calgary?
It was very strange for a number of months. In the last month, though, it's really gotten back to normal-ish.
Okay.
Everything's open now. I know that one of the meetings I go to is opening full force with no social distancing next week.
Really? Wow.
And it's almost back to normal, but I don't know if it'll ever get right back to normal, but it's pretty decent right now. It's been sunny and hot, and there's a lot of people downtown walking around, and everything seems normal right now. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm glad to see that's slowly getting back.
Wow. Well, I've heard that Canada is one of the better places. They took They listened to instructions right away about staying home and containing this.
Yeah, it was a pain in the ass, but I think that they took the right actions, and I was bored for a number of months, but I wasn't really bored. What it actually did, Dora, is it drove me right into the social media, to the video, and it really enhanced my spirituality. It took me up a couple levels, I swear to God.
That's been my experience too. I've really dove into projects and just had the time to focus on my website and the podcast and sharing other people's recovery stories. So it's actually been a blessing. These things probably would have taken me a couple of years to do if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. I was building the business and the brand already, but because of COVID, I just focused everything on it. And I think I got a couple of years worth of growth here in the last 4 months.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. So blessed to be sober and have these projects to work in a world crisis like this in isolation.
Yeah, and it's so nice to network with people like you and just people that are also passionate. Like I'm noticing, because I've never been in the social media world. I've never had social media ever.
Okay.
But in the last 3 or 4 months since I've been on it, I'm just like blown away at like people like you that are just taking this to the next level, and I'm connecting with some other people, and I've done a few interviews now, and now I'm going to start doing certain types of interviews for my own YouTube channel and my own podcasting. And it's just great when people are working together. And I'm, like I said earlier, I'm just so grateful that you're pushing this and promoting this and helping change people's lives, because I am of that saying that Gandhi talks about: if you want to be the change in the world, then you be it, right?
Right.
That's what you're doing, man. I love it.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot to hear those beautiful comments from you. And I feel the same. I can't believe I've met so many people on Instagram and through Instagram and other social media platforms. And some of these people have gotten sober for the first time, and they're telling me it's from following Instagram accounts and from listening to podcasts, and they've never even been to a real meeting. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah, mine too.
And now there's all these recovery meetings on Zoom. Like you can go to a meeting around the clock every hour around the world. And some people are coming in there and they've never been to an in-person meeting. And that's just like, wow, I can't believe it. That's their start, is in a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, and the Zoom meetings for me at first were really, really strange, but I ended up getting really invigorated on these meetings, and I started running big book studies. I started doing question and answer sessions. I just finished a full study recently, full design for living study, and now I'm in the plans. I have so many requests to start another one. I'm going to really promote it, and it's going to be for non-alcoholics and alcoholics and addicts, and it's going to run probably for about 3 or 4 months. So I'm stoked about that.
Oh, I'm going to have to get some more details on that. So, okay. Also on your IG account, I've seen several videos of you. Now, are you working on some kind of a film, or what are your videos about?
My videos are about just your specific topics related to recovery, sharing my experience, strength, and hope, and how recovery or how God has infiltrated and worked in my life. And because I've sponsored so many people, I have a lot of data. And so it's just to get a presence. It's just to tell the truth. It's just a way for me to extend my hand out and try to be helpful. But in about 3 or 4 months, me and my video team, VEC Labs, we are sitting down. I had a dream in January, and I was inspired to build a documentary about First Nations and about the spiritual malady as a whole.
Nice.
So we start laying that out in 2 or 3 months, and hopefully release a documentary that's going to hit people right between the eyes. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. So yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Hi, my name is Erica Sandor Zor, and I am so excited to be a guest on your your amazing podcast on Soberoso. It is an honor to be able to share my story with such an incredible person and such an incredible show like Soberoso. I cannot wait to be a part of this, and I cannot wait to share with all of you.
Hey Soberoso, this is Shanae from Vancouver, Canada. Congrats on the podcast, Mom. The recovery community is united and I love hearing people's stories. Support what Soberoso is doing and excited to tune into all the upcoming episodes.
Well, Bill, it has been just an absolute pleasure talking to you and getting to know you a little bit more. I thank you for joining us and sharing our passion for recovery.
Dora, like I said, I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. I'm so grateful that you had me here and I'm able to make a presence and, just do my little part in the world like you're doing yours, and just keep on keeping on and trying to help change and save lives. I'm like getting shivers because I'm so grateful.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing. We're all in this together, and the way that we recover is one alcoholic or one addict helping another. So the more people that hear this message, the better off we all are.
You know it.
Okay, so before we go into closing, why don't you tell our listeners how they can find you, your contact info, maybe a website or your IG account?
Okay, so yeah, my website is BILLWARDLIFE. You can find all of my links to all of my social media there. You're going to find a bunch of videos and some of my products and services that I'm in the process of building and developing now. But my website has everything, BILLWARD.life. My YouTube channel has a bunch of videos. I'm doing full big book studies there, and it has a bunch of different content. I will start uploading specific Indigenous healing content soon, as I'm going to start doing interviews with people that are activists or promoting healing in Indigenous community. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter are all online streaming memes, and I'm just learning how to deal with these social media type things, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. You can find it through my website, or you can search me. It's at BILLWARD.life. And the one thing I'd like to highlight is I have a Patreon account too. And because, I'm just a guy trying to slug this out on his own, I'm going to be really trying to service my Patreon account and see if I can't build a following there and help generate some revenue, because, some of the stuff is tough to do. And but in the same breath, I know God's going to take care of me, because he always has. And
that's right.
That's about all I got.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Bill. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and stay safe, stay sober, and to thine own self be true.
Love it. I love it, Dorian. Thank you again. You have a great day.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellows and friends, thank you for being a part of our July kickoff on the Soberoso podcast. That was our interview with Bill W. Bill Ward from Calgary, Canada. What a cool name that is, Bill W. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have always wanted to make your very own podcast, we encourage you to check out Anchor. If you have a message or a theme you would like to convey to the world, Anchor is an extremely easy to use application. It's user friendly and it's absolutely free. So check out Anchor and get started on your own podcast today. Our upcoming guests include Erica S. from Cleveland, Ohio. Erica S. has an incredible story that's going to rock your world. Be sure to check back for her story. Then we have another beautiful woman, Bianca, joining us from Dallas, Texas. She also has an incredible recovery story and is on fire for recovery. And then we have another Erica B from We Are Those People. She's from Austin, Texas, and her husband are doing incredible things for the recovery community and raising awareness for addiction. So, a great lineup of people on board. We hope you are too. We have several ways you can get in touch with us, reach out to us, contact us. You can contact me, your host, and the Soberoso community using Facebook or Instagram at Soberoso. You can also send us an email at info@soberoso.com. You can join us on our website community. Check out our website, the same deal, www.soberoso.com. We share people's recovery stories. We sell t-shirts and recovery merchandise. You'll find out everything you need to know about Soberoso and all the things we're doing on our website. There's also a button at the top of the screen when you get to that website, and it's in red block letters, and it says show some love. If you click on that button, that is our donate button. If you feel like you want to show us and encourage us a little more with some donations, you can do that there. Show us some love. $2, $5, $10, as you wish. No obligation, only if you're moved to do so. Voice messages. We want to hear your voice. You can send us a voice message that we may play and include in an episode. Tell us what you want to hear more about, what topics you'd like to hear. Don't forget when you leave a voice message to tell us your name, first name only, and where you are sending us a message from, where in the world you are. You might want to be a guest on our show. You might want to share your story in writing only. You might want to contact us to share your story with the world or on our podcast to celebrate a milestone. If you are still in lockdown and in COVID, like I am, taking isolation very seriously, and you have a big milestone birthday coming up, you can't get to your home group and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. If you are a clean and sober entertainer, we would love to hear your audio clips. It doesn't matter if you are a massive artist or if you are just breaking out into the scene, or if you just made a song while you were locked in and in isolation that has to do with recovery, has to do with saying goodbye to alcohol and the addiction. We would love to share your audio clip for you and let our listeners know a little bit about who you are. You can also share a part of your recovery story with that audio clip. If you would like to receive my Good Morning Beautiful Peeps daily message that I send out to hundreds of people every day, it's just a sentence, just a picture to start your day off in the right direction. You can contact me as well and get on that list to start your day off with that message. Tell us, tell us, what topics do you want to hear more about? We are open and ready to talk. There you have it. You've got all the information on how to contact us. We look forward to hearing from you. We love you and have a beautiful, sweet, sober day.